you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Portrait Letters podcast number 2356. Our question for you today is, why don't older relatives talk about certain parts of family history? So if you tuned in yesterday, you would have seen that the AI questions are still going to happen just once a week on a Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we'll be putting out event invites for all of that as well, so that you know when it's going to be. You can mark it in your calendar and everything else. We're going to be streaming live onto the Zanakin Studio YouTube channel. So it's part of what I do and part of who I am. But my real passion, if you've been following me for a long time, you know my real passion lies with genealogy and telling stories. So when I was talking with Terza, who is my business partner in Zanakin Studio, we decided to move Zanakin to a once a week podcast starting next Sunday, whatever the Sunday is on Sunday. What's the date on Sunday? The 18th of January at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we will let you know. I will still be coming on air every day at 6 p.m. Pacific, unless there is some reason why I can't, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you before then. Today I was sort of like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to create thumbnails for today. So we got the thumbnails created. We're all good to go. We've got a new thumbnail for our YouTube channel. And so now we're starting the genealogy route, and we will be mixing it in with the New Zealand route as well for discovering New Zealand. That's going to come a little later on, but right now we're doing the genealogy piece. And like I said, AI is moving to Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific. Okay, so our question for today is, our first question in our genealogy is, why don't older relatives talk about certain parts of family history? And silence in families is really accidental. Yes, very. Older generations were taught to endure, not discuss. So think about that, taught to endure and not discuss. There is a lot of stuff in my family history where there is a lot of holes and I have a ton of questions. And I can't ask those people who were involved with it anymore because they're no longer with us. But I found that there were certain things they would talk about and some things they wouldn't. And again, those older generations were taught to endure, not to discuss. My grandfather never talked about his days in the war when he was overseas fighting during World War II. Never spoke about it. It wasn't until years later, after he had passed, I got a little bit of the story. Not the whole story, just a little bit of the story. And his was because of the painful experiences that he had buried but hadn't processed. Silence was sometimes meant to be to protect the family. There were some secrets that the older generation kept because it was designed to protect the family. Unspoken stories still shaped relationships and discussions and decisions because they wouldn't talk about it. So people had to come to their own conclusion about what they thought the story was, basically living off assumptions and making those, and their relationships and their decisions were made around those assumptions because nobody would tell them the truth. It could be a family secret that could affect other generations, other people that are living. So they zip up about it because they don't want, because it could be a secret that somebody in the family doesn't know, and if they know it, it would have a major impact on their life. So they use it kind of as a protection. So sometimes the silence was meant to protect the family. There was one, there'd be some secrets in there that could upset the apple cart, so to speak. But what is avoided often holds important clues. I have several mysteries in my family tree that I am endeavoring to uncover as best I can. And because of how some of these things may have happened, there would be no records of it. But later on, there could become some records available. Well, there's no records available right now because of the timing. And the timing is based on when those records can be released to public viewing. Otherwise, they're private and you actually have to go to the office or contact the office and have them do the research for you and have to provide why you need to research that particular record, because it's not officially released to public viewing until a certain amount of time has passed. But what is often avoided can hold important clues. Like if they refuse to talk about a situation, like you turn and say, hey, can you clarify something for me? I've heard this story, but I don't know if it's true or not. And they may either they and was it my mother or one of my aunts? In one case, got told there are some things in this family we do not discuss. Like they put out there what they thought the story was, and got zapped down, got shut down really fast by saying there are some things in the family we don't discuss. And families are like that. There are stories in the family that are like that. And so now you have to become a detective and go, okay, what theories can we come up with that we can go and prove or disprove? And this is where the researching side of genealogy comes in, is that here is our theory. We either need to prove it or disprove it. Let's go do it. And so you decide now you think that this theory is true, so let's go prove that it's true. And everything you get to when you have exhausted all possible means of research and can't find it, then you're just going to say, okay, that theory is false. What's the next theory that we have? Let's go prove that one. And you may even prove or disprove several while you're researching for one, especially if it's around the same topic. So yeah, there's times that, and the reason that hang on, train of thought just went out my head. Okay, so the reason that we need to remember these points is that, older generations were taught to endure, not discuss. Painful experiences were often buried, not processed. In some cases, they were processed, but they were still too painful to talk about. Silence was sometimes meant to protect the family. Unspoken stories still shaped relationships and decisions based on, well, this is the story we've been told, but we suspect this story is true, and so they kind of try to make their decisions and relationships about that. And what is avoided often holds important clues. So when we have the unspoken history, it can leave later generations confused about who they are and where they have come from. And I have known families too, where they have hidden an adoption in the family. The child was either adopted out of the family, or a child was brought into the family under an adoption. And there's been cases where there's been in-family adoptions, like a young girl may have gotten pregnant and had a baby out of wedlock. And so the parents have adopted that child as their own. May not even been a formal adoption. It could have just been, you go do what you need to do. We are going to raise this child. And that's that family discussion. So the grandparents become the parents of that child. And any documentation that's filed shows the birth certificate has the mother and father, that has the grandparents' names on there instead of the actual mother's names. There's all sorts of things that they have done in the past to cover up babies born out of wedlock, adoptions, and that sort of thing too. It is our job as genealogists to help unravel all that. So your takeaway for this, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to get to hear a lot about this because I absolutely love digging into stories. I love trying to find out what's true and what's not when it comes to family rumors and myths and legends and that sort of thing. Stories that have been passed down through generation. How much there is an ounce of truth in there, but how much of it is actually true, and what is the true story, and uncovering that. So we will talk about that at some point as well. We will be talking about that. So your practical takeaway is pay attention to silence. What is not said can be just as important as what is remembered. So think about something in your family that you need some clarification on, and be very gentle about the way you ask. Don't just go and say, hey, boom. And a lot of this right now is coming, and a lot of these stories are coming to light thanks to DNA. And you're probably going to ask the question, how can DNA do this? I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. It can do this because DNA shows blood relations, but it doesn't tell you how you are related. You have to figure out the genealogy to show the relationship. And yes, I know it's out there. I know there are charts out there going, well, if it's between this centimorgan and between these centimorgans here, that means that they could possibly be a blah, blah, blah. Remember the words, could possibly be. Now, I have had some, and I've looked at these centimorgan charts. I don't think any of my links through DNA have ever fallen inside any of these centimorgan charts. One time I had, my aunt was on there, and it showed that the centimorgans that we had in common, but it listed her as my first cousin. It's quite possible this person's your first cousin. I went, nope, and corrected it and put her into my tree as my aunt, not my first cousin. So there's things like that. I have met up with third and fourth cousins who the centimorgans indicated would be like fifth, sixth, or seventh cousins. Nope, they're the third or fourth cousins. So don't put a lot of faith in the centimorgan ranges and what they suggest for relationships, because in my experience, most of the time I have found those to be incorrect. Have some fallen within those ranges? Yes. Have some fallen outside? Absolutely. So when it comes to, and DNA will show surprises when the results come back in, because it could show that parents or grandparents may not be biologically their parent or grandparents. And so be prepared when you're doing DNA research. You have to be prepared for surprises to happen. That could be shocking. It could be exactly what you expected to hear and that sort of stuff. But on the main part, always be prepared for the unexpected to come through with DNA research. So with that, if you need help uncovering family stories with care, just contact us, private message us, and we'll be more than happy to get on the phone with you and have a discussion about this. And in closing, silence does not erase history. It simply waits to be understood. And with that, we're out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Just trying to figure out what that noise was.